are behind this normative claim into 4. I suppose you could do it in 6 or you could do it in 3. I happen to do it in 4. It made sense to me. At one time it was 5, but they were condensed to 4. A particular kind of individualism, a particularly narrow kind, an ideology of knowledge that supports the rational Homo economicus. It's an ideology of the superiority of a particular kind of knowledge, and indeed I am a Greenspanite in this. I don't use ideology here as a pejorative. We all have ideology, and I'm very happy to find at least one thing I can agree with Alan Greenspan on. The third is unlimited wants. And again, the point has been made already. It's a big part of the problem is the naturalism of these assumptions, the idea that this is part of what it means to be a human being, rather than something which is historically, culturally, socially constituted. Finally, the assumption that the nation state is the only legitimate community. I want to take one of these. We don't have clearly any time to go through the argument in any detail. I want to take one of these assumptions, namely the assumption of rationality, the ideology of a particular kind of knowledge, and show how that has indeed undermined community, and how it has indeed been part of the problem of the failure of economics and the failure of markets more generally. Does economics need these assumptions before I get to that point? Well, I've already answered that question by saying that if economics were concerned with purely describing the world, it would not only not need these assumptions, it would find they get in the way, and we would have a very different kind of descriptive economics. I'm going to skip over. That's a long quote from John Maynard Keynes, of whom we will be hearing more and more. We've already started to hear more of Keynes in the last 6 months than probably in the previous 60 years. That may be an exaggeration, but I guarantee you we'll be hearing more of Keynes in the next 6 months and probably in the 6 months after that too, and a good thing. Keynes had a lot to say that was relevant to the Great Depression, and a lot of what he said is relevant to our problems today. And I trust this is all going to be posted somewhere so that you can get the quote that I'm not going to quote. Anyway, to summarize it, Keynes has an answer to the question I just put. How do we know when we don't know? How do we know in the face of overwhelming uncertainty? And he says that contrary to being able to analyze a situation of uncertainty, that is the kind of uncertainty which is so dramatic, so radical, that probability distributions simply don't help. We don't rely on our logical, rational analysis as much as we rely on one form or another of experience, conventional belief, authority, intuition, a variety of ways of knowing that are not, properly speaking, or in any way, logical deduction from self-evident first principles. I expand this idea into what I call systems of knowledge, and this is a term which is used a lot in development studies, and I use it somewhat idiosyncratically, so I ought to be a little bit clear on that. I don't mean this to contrast universal with local knowledge, which is the way I think it's more conventionally used. I use it to contrast different ways of knowing that are proper to human beings wherever human beings may be. That is to say, human beings in an Indian village, on Wall Street, on Main Street, all use what I'm going to call algorithmic knowledge. I'll define it a little more precisely momentarily. And they all use experiential knowledge. It is indeed our human nature that we combine both ways of knowing that are sometimes complementary to each other, sometimes in tension with each other, but that it is, as I say, the essence of being human that we can and do deploy both. What makes these systems of knowledge is that they are more than simply epistemologies. They have rules of transmission, they have rules of innovation, they have rules of power among the people who are practicing one system of knowledge or another, or I should say primarily one or another. But to focus, since time is short, on the epistemology, algorithmic knowledge, the kind that is enshrined in Homo economicus, is logical deduction from self-evident first principles. The Euclidean geometry. The Pythagorean theorem is as beautiful an example of this as you can find. Small number of self-evident first principles. I put that in quotes because we have changed what is self-evident even in the area of geometry. And so that's why there have to be rules for innovation. But the idea that you could go from a small number of first principles and get something as complicated as the Pythagorean theorem, you don't get that by going out and measuring a bunch of triangles. It's a matter of logical deduction in the very nature of what a triangle must be. So that's one system of knowledge. A second, or one epistemology. A second is the knowledge of experience. And that combines a variety of different ways of knowing: intuition, touch and feel, authority, convention. Ways of knowing that are recognized in certain areas, knowing how to ride a bicycle, knowing how to play the piano. My argument is that they are also deployed in knowing that. We know, to take an example that occurs in the book, we know that cotton does not grow in cold climates from experience as well as from logical deduction from first principles. What I want to argue is three propositions. I won't argue them, I'll just state them. First one I've already said: people everywhere use multiple systems of knowledge. The difference between the Indian village and Wall Street or the Harvard Law School classroom is not that people deploy logic in one arena and experience in the other. It's rather a balance between the two, and more in the second of the three propositions, namely that people in Indian villages do not generally privilege algorithmic knowledge over experiential knowledge in the same way that we do, and that is our legacy from the project of modernity. And finally, that ideology and practice are not watertight compartments. If they were, then there wouldn't be much to be concerned about. But that ideology does affect practice, and you can certainly see this both in the way the economy works and in the way that economics works. So I want to apply this now in the, I hope, 10 minutes I have available to a particular problem. Mortgage banking and its transformation. How many have seen the movie that comes around every Christmas or so, It's a Wonderful Life? Everybody's seen it. Okay, good. So you know about George Bailey, the community banker who bails everybody out and holds the community together, actually. And what are some characteristics of that are important for my story? Well, first, the bank is embedded in the community. The bank is part of the community. And this comes up in many ways. It comes up when George Bailey bails people out, but just in the very way that mortgages are structured. George Bailey makes a loan, and that bank, his bank, is going to hold that loan until it's paid off.